Welcome to another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder. That means each episode is less than 666 seconds, which is 11 minutes and 6 seconds if you're keeping track at home. So let's get into it tonight. You guys have really voiced your opinion that you're super interested in the Idaho 4 case, and I'm definitely one of you. I'm really interested in this as well, so I wanted to do another episode about that and something else that I thought would be interesting for us to talk about here. So I'm going to share this with you. Okay, so the question is, did Brent Kopaka get help? Now, first off, I'm not saying anything that Brian's guilty, because I've already said this more than once, that he's innocent until proven guilty in a court, okay? But let's just go with the assumption that he did it, okay? Did he have help? Because I thought it would be interesting to talk about this. I've heard other creators getting into this as well. I mean, in my personal opinion, and I know others, you guys out there have commented about this, that there's definitely more than one person that did this crime. I honestly don't see how one person is doing this unless they're like Delta Force or some extremely, well-trained individual that could do this and be that quick about it. So, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, imagine the sound that this would have made in this house. So, I mean, other than the first victim, how would any others be surprised? I mean, I know that they had been drinking, and I know that, supposedly they were sleeping, but, we see from the autopsy that there were struggles, defense wounds. This would have not gone quietly. This would have been loud. And I can't imagine in my own house, which apparently this house was about 2,200 square feet, my house is just under 2,000 square feet, so give or take. And I can't imagine what this would sound like in my own house. It would be unbelievably loud, and there's no way I wouldn't have been able to hear it. I'm just not believing it any other way. So, in my opinion, there were two, for lack of a better word, hit squads hitting each of these rooms at the same time, which would have given them the element of surprise, at least for a little while, and nobody would have been leaving the room. They would have been able to take care of all four victims within pretty short order if they did it that way. I think there's even a possibility, that there could have been another person maybe outside as a lookout here as well. But I'm thinking two groups, two each, or at a bare minimum, one person in one room, one person in the other room. But, Kaylee and Maddie's wounds were not by the same weapon. So that leads me to believe that two people did the murders, and possibly, like I said, two in one room, two in another. But I'm curious what you guys think about this. Now, one of the people that's been brought up in this whole story is Brent Kopaka. And if you're not familiar with him, there's a lot of videos out there about him and about his story. And I suggest you check those out if this interests you. But 31 days after the Moscow, Idaho incident, on December 15, 2022, 36-year-old Army veteran Brent Kopaka was killed by SWAT officers in Pullman, Washington. And of course, you guys know Pullman is where Brent Kopaka was living before his arrest. Now, strangely, Brian and his dad were mentioning this incident with Brent Kopaka when they got pulled over by the Indiana trooper, which seems very strange. I mean, they were on their way to Pennsylvania, and they brought up this incident. So really weird that they would have brought that up to a cop in another state. I don't really know what the reasoning was for that, but very suspicious. And there was a lot of suspicion around the shooting of Brent Kopaka. He was suffering from PTSD, and apparently had threatened to kill his roommates, which is why the police were supposedly called. And YouTube creators like Crime Circus, Harsh Reality, and Jules of All Trades have posted some really good content about the controversy surrounding that whole incident with Brent. Now, in full disclosure, I'm a U.S. Army veteran myself. I'm a disabled vet. So, I can in some ways relate to, some of the things that Brent may have been going through, but I was never in a war time situation, and I believe he was. So much different experience. But the body cam video on this incident is really interesting. I suggest you check it out. Now, Crime Circus posted some information about Bryan KOHBERGER's cell phone pings that would have put him very close to the apartment building where Brent Kopaka was living in Pullman on the night of the murder. So makes you wonder, did he pick him up on his way there? I mean, it certainly could be possible. And that's just it. All of this is conjecture. None of us really know anything, but it's possible. Another thing, they had showed a lot of Brent's weapons, and he had this really big machete that he had on display in his apartment. Kind of weird. But nonetheless, we know that the weapon used in the incident in Moscow was definitely more than a knife, possibly a machete or a sword or something big like that. So that makes you wonder, was he involved in it? Don't really know. So, the thing is, another angle of this is that, a lot of people suspect that somebody that did this had some military training. And of course that would, satisfy the curiosity that maybe Brent Kopaka was involved. He was a 82nd Airborne infantry soldier, so he definitely would have been trained in things like hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that. So another reason to make you wonder about this whole, did Brent help Bryan? The fact that Brent's even part of this conversation, and that he was eliminated by SWAT officers under some very strange circumstances makes me wonder, makes me speculate like the rest of us. I mean, I'm not anti-police. I mentioned in another video, my dad was in law enforcement. I have absolutely nothing against law enforcement, but I don't think it's unreasonable to question what they do, especially given their tremendous power that they have to impact our lives in tremendous ways. Bryan may have met Brent in maybe an online chat group. He was very involved in some of that kind of stuff from what I've heard. Also, we know Bryan studied criminology, and he would have known, I think, that he needed some help, and maybe would have looked at getting a soldier to help him. And Brent would have certainly fit that bill. Also an odd coincidence that the two of them have similar sounding names and the same initials. Really weird. So what do you guys think? I mean, I appreciate all your comments. My other Idaho 4 videos, you guys have left a tremendous amount of comments, and I do appreciate that. It's a great way to know what you guys are thinking about these cases. You guys are smart. You guys out there that have been following this case closely have a lot of things to add to the table. So go for it. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching another episode. I appreciate it. If you guys are interested in what I do, you can follow me every week on the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast on most every podcast platform, or by going to murdermetalmayhem.com and viewing or listening to it that way. Thanks again.